I speak to you in the name of our holy Creator, our Redeemer and our Sanctifier. Amen. So, it has been 7 weeks that we have been on this journey with Jesus to Jerusalem. The last 7 weeks, we have been continuing from the north towards the south, towards Jerusalem. They have been on a journey together. And although it's omitted from the lectionary for some reason, the verses right before what we read today is Jesus' third time to announce the passion, to announce that Jesus will be handed over and be beaten. He will be crucified, he will be killed, and will rise again. So we know that what is said today is important. We know that 3 is an important number in the Bible in general, especially with Jesus, the Trinity. This is the third time he has given them this message. Yet, our disciples are not getting it. And it is so easy to smile, laugh at them. Like, who do you think you are? You're traveling with Jesus, the Son of God. And you're saying, all right, Jesus, before I ask, I want to know that you're going to say yes. Just like a little kid. And Jesus had said to be like the children. I don't think this is the kind of child behavior he was thinking about. But we do this as well. We may not phrase it in the same way, but we ask for things that are for our own benefit and not for the glory of God. We all have asked for probably a thing that we thought would help us, a promotion or something that was going to help us get to a next place. We are so much like these disciples, but they're in a book. They're remote from us, so it's easier to maybe laugh at them and not take them as seriously. But how are we alike and how are we different? We now know the truth. We now know that what Jesus has prophesied will come true. We are on the other side of that part of the journey. But they are still living in a world where Jesus has not died. They are still living in a world where they are seeking a Messiah. They are living under the oppression of Roman rule. They're traveling around and they see people everywhere looking for healing, for comfort, for security. And the idea that this man, Jesus, they are following is going to leave them has to be terrifying. He has given them so much, and think of the joy that must surround a visit of Jesus into your town or your neighborhood. The healings, bringing people back to life. So, they are scared. Just like many people may be today, we're uncertain about what's going to happen in 2 weeks with the election. That brings fear for many people, anxiety, tension. How is the world going to change? So we can relate to their asking this question, even if it feels like, wow, sitting at the right hand of God? I wouldn't dare ask. I wouldn't want that seat. What would you be expecting from me? So this week, we attended a play at Hayfield Secondary. It was called Hadestown. And John Pryor, the Pryors usually sit in the front pew up here, was Hades in the play. And oh, it was so fantastic. I wish I could tell you to go see it. The problem with having church on Sunday is that the play is done. But it was fantastic. It's a Greek tragedy, as Hades might suggest. It's about Orpheus and Eurydice, if you've studied Greek literature. Orpheus is a musician, songwriter, He is human, but he does have a great gift for music. They are living in a time where Hades has married Persephone. Persephone is the daughter of Demeter, who brings about the spring, and Persephone married Hades and is taken to the underworld. But she's not happy living her life in the underworld. So Hades gives her, I swear he gives her a fruit or something, it's a number of seeds, but for a certain number of months, she gets to come to the overworld, to our world. But right now, Persephone and Hades are fighting. They are not happy with one another, and that is causing chaotic weather above. Winds and blight. People are hungry. And Eurydice comes into this scene, and in Hades town, it is a train station, and it is its own character in this play. Hungry, alone, cold, looking for food. And our narrator is Hermes' wife. She also is the custodian or guardian of, now what's his name? Orpheus. And she wants to hook up Orpheus and Eurydice. So she introduces them to one another. They fall in love, but then Orpheus is working on this song that's going to bring spring back into the world. And it's beautiful in the play. He starts singing and the lights change blue. It goes from a dim look to this blue, and you can see the hope rising in the scene, but he doesn't quite have the whole song. But he gets fixated on that song, and Eurydice gets tired of waiting. Hades has come into town, probably to collect more people, and we know Hades is the god of the underworld. This is Greek myth, so this is not the same as Christian theology, but there are similarities. We think of hell being down below. We think of Satan wanting to instigate evil, negative things in the world. And Hades has some of those same characteristics. So Hades comes into the overworld, into our world. He sees Eurydice, and she's very depressed, very alone, in love with Orpheus, but he can't see her for his focus on this music. And Hades invites her to Hades town, and she goes. She goes down, she takes the train with him down to Hades town, signs the paper, and she is now part of his community. And they are a community of factory workers, and they're building a wall for freedom. Wall and freedom don't connect, do they? Just like in our world, our attempts for success and money, our attempts for maybe notoriety is a negative thing, but for fame, those don't connect with Jesus' way of life either. And so they're all working together, and the teens did just a fabulous job with the dancing, the music, and they're hammering, and they're all in sync. And there's 20 plus teens in this scene, all hammering and doing these motions together. And Eurydice is not quite in sync. She just got down there and isn't quite in sync with them. But after just one verse of the song, Eurydice is right in sync with them. Just like us. One of the reasons we come back to church is to reconnect, to sync up again with one another, and most importantly, with God. We get caught, our world is so filled with messages from Satan, with messages from Hades, with messages about capitalism, about success, about what the world might look like. What does my kingdom look like? Each having our own kingdom. But when we look at our gospel, we see that is not at all what Jesus came to bring. And that is also one of the reasons the disciples get so confused in so many instances. They are looking for a Messiah who is going to reestablish their kingdom of Israel. They are looking for a disciple who is going to be a political leader, potentially a military leader. And Jesus keeps talking about the first shall be last and the last shall be first. It doesn't compute. Their expectations and what Jesus says and soon will do don't connect. And it's very hard to see that. So in the play, Orpheus now knows that Eurydice has gone to Hades town, and he can't get on the train because he doesn't want to actually go to Hades town with Hades, walks there, goes through his own journey to get there, and looks to save Eurydice. So he challenges Hades, the god of the underworld, who is played by our own Henry, with this amazing bass voice, and plays this song that he has been working on throughout the play. And he turns Hades' heart. Hades is gruff and mean and just someone you don't want to run into. I thought he needed a cowboy hat, and spurs. He was the sheriff of the town, and you did not want to mess with him. But after hearing Orpheus' song, he's lighter. That love, there's a spark of that in his heart again. And he sees his wife Persephone again for the beautiful, gifted woman that she is. And so Orpheus kind of wins this, but of course Hades is Hades, and he can't just say, all right, you won, go, because then everyone's going to challenge Hades. He can't just kill them, because then they become martyrs, and then they become even more powerful. He can't just keep them either, because then they're going to talk. So what he does, he comes up with a way that he can save face. Again, something we do in this world today. How often have we done something wrong, and we come up with a way to describe it without really putting it on our own shoulders? When you study grammar in other languages, it's very fascinating. In Spanish, for example, if a cup fell off the table, it would be the cup fell. Not that I knocked the cup off the table, but that the cup itself fell and did the action. We often do that too. We want to move the blame somewhere else rather than taking that on ourselves, either as an individual or as a community. When we really look at our world today, there are so many things that are going on that we want to say, no, I didn't have anything to do with that. Because we see it goes out further and further and harms more and more people. But because we are a society, because we are a community, we are responsible. So, what Hades proposes is that Orpheus and Eurydice can leave. But Orpheus must lead the way out, and Eurydice must follow. And Orpheus cannot look back until they are both above ground. So they travel through this journey from Hades back up to the world again. And Orpheus steps into the overworld, to our world from the underworld. He is safe, and he turns around and looks at Eurydice, who is not yet in our world. She is still in the underworld. And Eurydice falls back. They choreographed it beautifully in the play. They had an area where she literally fell back into all the hands of the people who live in Hades and cannot leave. It's a tragedy. And the reason we still know this story today, because it is a tragedy, it's a romance, and it hits at the heart of humanity. The Greeks did a fabulous job of connecting with what it is to be human, with telling these stories about our flaws in our humanity that the gods do better. But if you ever study Greek mythology, you know that the gods don't always get it right. That's why we don't worship those gods anymore. They don't get it right. And there has to be a bunch of them in order to figure things out. We too can feel like we are on the right path, we're going forward, we are following God, we're following what we think is right, and then we too sometimes feel like we fall back. And what has happened? It may be an illness, it may be the loss of a job, it may be a death in the family, it could be just a disagreement with your best friend. But we feel like we have fallen back all the way into Hades. But the difference is, in our community, in the life of Christ, when we fall back, there are hands waiting for us. They are the hands of God waiting to catch us when we fall. Bad things do happen to Christians. Bad things happen all around the world. We don't have to look, you don't have to even try to see that happening today. What is going on, in our Holy Land? The authoritarian governments around the world where people are starving so that a few elite can hold on to the wealth. We see that in the loss of community members, in death. Life can be very hard. But we know in Jesus, because what Jesus has told us, because of the resurrection, that when we do fall, Jesus is there to catch us. And we here are that community who serve as the hands and feet of God. If we are going to be like the people the disciples become, we have to stand together, support one another. The path that the disciples follow with Jesus is always in community. They are not traveling separately. They don't have someone go scout ahead for a room. Or could you go here and, make sure, reserve a table for us, and we'll be there in about an hour after we finish what we're here? They always are going together. They are not separated. And we cannot go on this journey with and towards Jesus without each other. It takes turning our back to Hades. It takes turning our back on sin and evil, even though, I know what, I've studied this. I know what God is telling me to do, telling us to do. But I can walk in my closet and think, I could really use another pair of shoes. I have perfectly fine shoes. I don't need any more shoes. But this morning I'm getting dressed and I'm like, wouldn't it be nice to have another pair of black shoes? I don't need another pair of black shoes. It is so easy. Just in the blink of an eye, we go from thinking about God to thinking about ourselves. And what Jesus is telling us here is we have to start working harder to think about our community, to think about where God is calling us to go. Henry Nouwen wrote, and we all know who Henry Nouwen is? No? He is a more modern theologian. He died in the mid-1900s, maybe even the 70s. Not sure exactly the dates, but he is more closely to our time. He has died. Catholic, but just writes about spirituality in a way that really connects and resonates with so many people. He wrote, Only those who face their wounded condition can be available for healing and so enter a new way of living. The way we become new disciples, the disciples after the resurrection, is by seeing we are flawed, by seeing where we need to work on things, by seeing one another. And through that work, we are healed. We are healed. If you have ever been on some kind of outreach, maybe you've been simply sitting with someone at the hospital, and your focus is completely on the other person, the person in the bed. Or you've fed in a feeding ministry and you've been serving food and you're so caught up in other people. That is where God calls us to be. We can't live there. I don't think it's possible for humans to stay in that place. But that is that place where the light shines on us and we feel that closeness to God when we are putting others first and not worrying about our own needs. So how do we go forward with this news? How do we focus on Jesus and not worrying about the church? Are we dying? Are we closing the church? Or I don't like this and I don't like that. How do we move our focus back to Jesus? The only way I can say is through prayer and your own conversations with God, but through conversation with one another, by calling one another and saying, hey, how is your prayer life today? How is your spiritual journey? Reminding us, each other, as we go through the week, that we are working here for God, that all that we do is for God, and that sometimes what looks like normal is really more of Hades Town, where we have been brainwashed into a certain way of thinking, not taking Jesus at his word, that following Jesus is the way to the truth and the life ever after. Amen.